What's up, Dirt Trax Nation? Luke here, bringing you the first walk-around video of the 2024 riding season. I don't even know. It gets very confusing as time goes on when you're dealing with all kinds of different product lines and all kinds of different years. However, what we have here is a new RMAX 1000 limited edition, obviously a four-seater. Now, this isn't brand new. We had this one for a portion of last season. So you can see it's got some miles on it. It's got a little bit of mud on it. We've ridden it, we've tested it, and I just wanted to give you guys a walk around video because we didn't do one on it last season. So here we go. Now, it's obviously an RMAX4, and that's something that you've heard me talk about, heard us talk about multiple times. So it's nothing new in terms of, you know, general overall specifications, but I will go through them anyway. This is a 999cc parallel twin cylinder engine, makes somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 horsepower. They won't claim exactly, but that's sort of where we're all at. Obviously, it's a four-seater, but it's a short wheelbase four-seater. As far as short wheelbase four-seaters go, I think I can pretty confidently say this is my favorite one. The RMAX is such a great platform in this configuration. Now, if you come back here, you can see one of the unique things that Yamaha did. I guess it's not unique, other people have done it, but one of the things that they did to make the short wheelbase four-seater more functional, and this is a great example of it because we've got the one seat here is all the way back, so this is the way it would be configured if you're going to use the back seat, and then that seat is configured all the way forward if you wanted to have the bed set up for carrying cargo. Obviously, you can move them individually. So in this case, if you had, say, two parents and a kid, or a parent and two kids, but still wanted to bring some gear, you've got space for gear behind the second seat that you're not using. So that's a pretty great setup. The sliding system for the seats isn't the smoothest. It's not the slickest way of doing things. It does work, but it's pretty finicky. And I can only imagine after you get it super muddy and sandy and dirty that it's gonna get even more finicky, but it is functional and it does work, and it's a pretty trick setup. So I really like how this works. In the back, I'm just gonna talk a little bit about seating here. There isn't a lot of space for your feet in the back. So it's pretty tight for a full-size large adult like me, but it's great for a smaller stature person. There's lots of room in there. The seating is very comfortable. The seats are big. There's actually a decent amount of knee room, so that's not a problem. It's really just that the center console that houses, you know, a lot of the engine right here in the middle interferes with your foot space, your footwell area, and that's unfortunately something that you can't really do much about. The engine has to be there, so your feet have to go somewhere. I want to point out as well that this model has 4 full doors. This is obviously like a little itsy bitsy door, but it's a door right down to the bottom. It doesn't have, you know, like a bar, an opening, space in the bottom for mud to get in. This thing does a great job of protecting you from the mud, and obviously the front door as well is a full door. Opens pretty far. I would like it to open about 10 inches further, but it's very functional, closes nice and tight, doesn't rattle. This is a great door setup. Yamaha's done an excellent job, and I really like that it's not just a skin with a metal frame, it's actually finished on the inside too, which is really cool. Your seating position up front, the seats are basically the same seats as what's in the back. You have tons of legroom in an RMAX for the driver and passenger. Lots of space to stretch out. I even moved the seat a little bit forward, and I'm 6'1", so that says a lot. Interior wise, you know, the steering wheel is really nice, rubber coated, and it is super grippy, so you can drive it with or without gloves, and you'll still get lots of traction for your hands. There's a storage bin in the middle there underneath your armrest, and the top of the armrest is soft, so your elbow doesn't, that bone on your elbow, you know, doesn't get sore after riding for a while. You've got your high-low neutral reverse transmission, and you have a parking brake. So something Yamaha does a little differently than a lot of other people is they actually have a parking brake. Your gauge package is pretty basic, but it works really well. Typical Yamaha gauge package for most of their side-by-sides. And it does tilt with the tilting steering column, so that's nice. It always ends up right in the middle of your steering wheel cutouts. In the dash, I'm gonna move over here and leave the camera on this side so I can talk more about it. In the dash, you know, you've got switches and stuff, and this ugly cover right here that we complain a lot about in Canada. In Canada, we don't get the Adventure Pro setup, not as a factory standard feature. In the US, you actually get this model with the Adventure Pro built into the dashboard. You pay more for it. In Canada, we don't. It's an option you can have added after the fact at your dealer. And the reasoning, I guess, is understandable from Yamaha's perspective in that the mapping setups that is included in the Adventure Pro are not very extensive in Canada. The mapping isn't as good. However, The Adventure Pro does a lot more than just mapping. It also gives you all kinds of vehicle information. It gives you audio and all kinds of other stuff too. I'm kind of getting sick of that excuse, to be honest, that Yamaha says, well, the mapping isn't as good, so we don't want to give you a feature that doesn't work properly. Give me the thing in the dash right from the factory, because it does more than just mapping and I want it. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who are willing to buy a Wolverine limited edition like this one, full jam, which we'll talk more about. They want it. So just put it in and stop messing around. I get it. The mapping doesn't work great. You can still use the GPS with breadcrumbs to get you home. That still works. So my opinion is put it in the dash, give it to us. I'm not going to rant about that anymore. What I will point out though, and I've pointed this out in a lot of the walk around videos, and it's really funny to me, is just how many flippin' switch locations they give you. Now these are all rubber covers. You just pop them out and put in a rocker switch, but there's like, I mean, the space shuttle doesn't have that many switches in it, but Yamaha apparently thinks you need 27 light bars to see your way at night. So you got switches for all of them. That's nice. Passenger grab handle is extremely nice. It's adjustable, it's solid, doesn't rattle. It does move, but it doesn't rattle. It's all rubber mounted inside, which is really, really nice and smart on their part. Easily adjustable with a lever here. You've got a glove box down here, your 12-volt outlet here. Your winch, which is included, a 4,500-pound Warn winch is included with this limited package. You got your winch control right here, and we'll talk about suspension in a minute. So again, factory setup is great on this vehicle, lots of features. Footwell space for the passenger is equally as good as the driver. Lots of room, very grippy surface for your feet so you can hold yourself in real tight while your driver goes nuts. A couple other features that are included, rear view mirror and the roof. So these are standard features on the limited model. And I think that every side-by-side that's ever built should come with at least a basic roof. I mean, you're paying $25,000, $30,000, $35,000 for some of these units, not this one in particular, but some of them. Just give me the $500 roof, I deserve it. So let's talk a little bit more about some specifics here, some technological specifics, because there's really interesting stuff happening. First of all, you've got four-wheel independent double A-arm suspension all the way around, and you guys know I use a cheat sheet to get these numbers right. You have 14.2 inches of front end travel and 13.3 inches of rear end travel. Now, this is one of the big areas that the RMAX 2 and 4 differ. The 14.2 up front is the same on all RMAX models. That's a standard front suspension. But in the rear, you actually lose 3 inches of suspension travel when you go with the four-seater. And if you think about it, it makes sense. To get suspension travel, you need to have your shocks mounted way up high. And you can't do that because they'd be sticking right up into your bum right here if they stuck up that high. So they gotta be shorter, which means you gotta limit the travel. And that's just unfortunately the way it turned out. Now with that said, the 13.5 inches in the back is actually really, really good travel and is actually in a lot of cases class leading anyway. So there's really nothing you're giving up here in terms of four-seat suspension. When you go from the 2 to the 4, you do lose some, but in terms of four-seat suspension, this thing has got excellent suspension, and it gets even better because this model, the Limited, has got IQS electronic suspension. There's a switch on the dash right here, and you flick the switch from comfort, medium, and firm. That makes sense. Those are descriptive terms that make perfect sense, unlike a lot of snowmobile manufacturers these days. Anyway, you just flip the switch. It's fast, it immediately adjusts all four shocks, and it is super effective. Essentially, it's like having QS3 shocks that you never have to touch. And of all the suspension systems in the industry, I think price versus features versus functionality, this is probably the best because it's not as expensive as some real smart suspension setups, but pushing that button is not hard to do, and it makes a very big difference in terms of how the vehicle rides. So great job on Yamaha's part for including IQS on this model. They do have it on some other models, the 2-seat as well, and it's 100% worth the extra money to spend to get IQS, in my opinion. The other thing this has, obviously, is shiftable 4x4, so you get 2-wheel, 4-wheel, and diff lock right here on a little knob. Your light switch is the other knob, and then you've got D modes. And in this vehicle, you've got crawl, trail, and sport are the 3 D modes. Now in crawl, it does exactly what you would expect it to. It absolutely limits throttle sort of ramp up. It completely mellows out your throttle inputs from your foot. It also limits sort of throttle, how much power you're gonna get. so you can crawl so smoothly over rocks. It's excellent for rock crawling. It's a perfectly named setting. It works great for rock crawling. I use it all the time whenever I go rock crawling in one of these things, or even get into really technical terrain. I use crawl mode because it just filters out all of that jerkiness that might spin a tire when you don't want to, or if you're climbing something crazy steep, might make the front wheels kind of lift up, and you don't want that to happen. Just use crawl mode, it's great. Next one you have is trail, and this is where you're going to spend 99% of your time. Trail gives you full power. It just kind of mellows out the power delivery just a little bit, keeps it a little bit softer, so it's not as abrupt, it's not jerky, it's very smooth. If you got family with you, if you got cargo in the back and you don't want to spill stuff or have kids' heads banging around, use trail mode because it's very controllable. But it still gives you full throttle, full power, full fun. When you go to sport mode, AJ and I have talked a lot about this with RMAXs, it's too jerky. The sport mode is almost too aggressive. It makes it hard to do any kind of smooth throttle inputs. And I mean, there's something to be said for when I step on it, it goes really fast. But anybody who drives fast knows that smooth is fast. And that's sort of why AJ and I pick trail even when we're gonna drive this thing really hard. The abrupt throttle inputs can do things or make the vehicle behave in ways that you don't expect it to or don't want it to, and you have very little control over that. So I would like to see Yamaha tone sport mode down, just the initial tip in, just tone it down a little bit, maybe ramp up power on the second half of the power curve. That would be fine, but the tip in is just a little too abrupt. That's one complaint I do have here. Wheel and tire package on this model is 29-inch Maxxis Carnage tires. They are mounted on 14-inch aluminum wheels. They're not beadlocks. Interesting thing about the 2-seat versus 4-seat RMAX, the 2-seat gets 29s, the 4-seat gets 29s, the 2-seat gets 30s. The other thing that's different is on the 2-seater, you have a square pattern. So all 4 tires are the same size, same width. On the 4-seater, the rears are wider. And that's kind of interesting. I'm not quite sure why they did that. It could have something to do with cargo carrying capacity. The wider tire maybe just makes it easier to carry heavier weights. I don't really know, but it's interesting that they're different in that way. Speaking of weights, you have a 600-pound bed capacity in this model. So with the seats forward, you can put 600 pounds of junk in the back. And you have a 2,000-pound towing capacity with the 2-inch hitch receiver, standard 2-inch hitch receiver. So anything you've got for your pickup trucks or whatever else will work in here. And you can tow up to 2,000 pounds. Now, that's pretty impressive. That's a lot of weight to tow. And this thing actually does it pretty well in low range. It really doesn't complain a lot. Another spot where crawl mode is great is when you're towing a heavy load, you put it in low range, you just want to feather that throttle as you're getting a heavy weight moving. Maybe you're towing your boat up the boat ramp or something, you don't want to spin the tires. Crawl mode's perfect for that. There's not really much else to say on this thing. I've kind of covered most of it. It's a great looking unit. I love this color scheme this season with the dark blue and the high-vis accents. I really like how this model, just generally speaking, looks. It does come, as I said, with a 4,500-pound Warn winch pre-installed. It's just a great looking unit. It works great. It's, as I said earlier, become, I would say, AJ's and my favorite short wheelbase 4-seater. If we had to take our family and we needed a short wheelbase, this is the model I think both of us would pick 10 times out of 10. Yamaha's done a great job with it, including features that matter, including things that make the riding experience better. My opinion, if you're gonna buy an RMAX, the limited edition is well worth the extra money. The extra features you get as far as like IQS, as far as the winch and things like that, they're worth the money. But that's up to your personal decision and your budget. So that's all I got to say about this thing. I like it. It's working great. We're looking forward to putting another season on this one. And yeah, so thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click the like button. If you got something to say or you got some questions about this unit, make sure you comment. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the Dirt Trax YouTube channel. We have lots of content coming out now that the season's getting rolling. So you definitely don't want to miss any of that. Click that bell button if you want to be notified as soon as new videos are uploaded. We appreciate you guys. We always like hearing your feedback, and we do read as many of your comments as we possibly can, so don't be afraid to leave some, and we'll see you on the next one.